Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app, O'Connor and Company.
It is 7:07. It's O'Connor and Company Tuesday morning, and a busy one at that. Coming up in 30 minutes, Josh Christenson, New York Post. How Pete Buttigieg spent a ton of his money, our money, at the Department of Transportation on DEI instead of upgrading air traffic control systems. And then 8:05, Joe Concha on all things media and pop culture and even the Redskins. It's Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
Joining us right now, one of our favorites in the U.S. Senate. He is Ron Johnson of the Badger State of Wisconsin. Senator Johnson, thanks for joining us, sir.
Morning, guys. Hope you're doing well.
We're well. In fact, before we get rolling on some of the topics we wanted to hit, I want to congratulate you on being part of the effort to defund NPR and PBS finally after decades of Republicans promising it. It must drive you nuts that there's still people on your side of the our side of the aisle, Republicans, who found it difficult to cast that vote.
Well, I mean, the reality is we've got a broad spectrum in our conference. We've got people who like to spend money and, I guess, have faith in government, and I guess believe that the Corporation Public Broadcasting needed federal support. You know, I obviously don't share that view. It's more than frustrating. Let's put it that way out.
Yeah. That said, there's a couple of things that we really want to get to. First of all, you're a part of the effort there in Congress to get to the bottom of and the real truth behind what happened in the Biden administration, the Biden White House, in covering up the apparent decline, the obvious decline, physically and mentally, of Joe Biden. I'm sure you're seeing some of the testimony over in the House in James Comer's Oversight Committee, where so many people now are pleading the fifth on some pretty innocuous questions because they fear, I guess, criminal repercussions potentially. What are you able to accomplish in the Senate in this regard?
Well, I don't like duplicating efforts. So you have James Comer. I totally appreciate what he's trying to do. He's really focusing on the use of the auto pen. You know, were there any laws broken, improper pardons granted or granted improperly? I think the Department of Justice is looking at the same thing. What I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and create the historical record. We've requested interviews with 28 cabinet officials, constitutional officers, people who took an oath to defend and uphold the Constitution. Well, part of that Constitution is the 25th Amendment. And so I think it's just important to, very diligently go through interview by interview by interview and talk to these cabinet officials. What did you see? Were there discussions? Again, we'll do it one by one, transcribed interviews. They'll be under oath. And it's literally to create the historical record. We've also asked for the same records that the archives have sent out to the Department of Justice. But again, I think with President Biden, I guess probably giving the heads up and say, hey, President Biden, you got to say that you proved all these things. He said that now. I'm not sure where the auto pen investigation goes. Again, I fully support everybody's efforts to get to the bottom of that. Mm-hmm. We're just taking a slightly different approach. It's going to take longer. But I think creating that historical record will be important for future cabinet officials, future vice presidents who will be in the position potentially very, very uncomfortable, very probably unpopular. But if they see a president that is incapable of fulfilling the awesome and onerous duties of the president of the United States, they need to act. And we'll try and create that historical record and maybe give them the courage, maybe put the pressure on them to act.
But it sounds like you don't see any criminal referrals coming on any of this. Like if people in the White House knew for a fact that President Biden was incapable of carrying out his duties, and they witnessed other people's making decisions and giving directives that normally the president would be responsible for, is there no criminality potentially there?
I'm not a lawyer, not a criminal prosecutor, so I really don't know. Yeah, I've always contended, ever since I didn't really come here to be investigated, but becoming chairman of Homeland Security, and now chairman of the Permanent Subcommittee Investigation, it's kind of turned into my role. The first element of accountability is exposure. And I am far more interested in exposing. In Congress, we can't indict, we can't prosecute anyway. We can certainly refer over the Justice Department. So from any kind of criminal statutes, that'll be the Justice Department to determine that. I'm all about uncovering the facts, doing it in a very thorough manner, create the historical record for accountability. These guys, a couple of them have already spilled the beans to Jay Capper. I think we'll be able to find out who those cabinet officials are, right? I mean, we'll ask them for it again. They've got, if they plead the fifth on that, I guess it's going to be pretty telling. So it's amazing what you can do if you go through this thoughtfully, step by step. You keep your investigatory records confidential until you write your report. Again, people are under oath, so I'm hoping to get to the truth.
Well, listen, you were one of the people trying to get to the truth of the Russian collusion hoax and how the FBI and DOJ may have, and the CIA for that matter, in league with the Obama White House, may have circumvented people's constitutional rights and the law with regard to the Operation Crossfire Hurricane investigation. Now that you've seen this revelation, this document dump from DNI Tulsi Gabbard, I'd love for your perspective on this. Again, in the same vein, is there criminal behavior? This is incredibly disconcerting, I would think, if not, as Tulsi Gabbard put it, a treasonous conspiracy.
Yeah, I felt people like John Brennan, James Comey were criminals. I've felt that for years. And by the way, I truly appreciate what Tulsi Gabbard is doing here, providing the documentation to confirm and reaffirm what's already been known. I have to admit, other than seeing new documentation, I'm not really learning anything new from these revelations. I mean, we knew that the whole Russian collusion was a plot hatched by the Hillary Clinton campaign. We knew that John Brennan briefed Obama because foreign intelligence operations had caught on to that plot, and he briefed Obama. We know that Obama had a meeting in the White House with people like Biden and Brennan and Susan Rice, where they fully were aware of this. And yet you had James Comey then set up Michael Flynn. You had James Comey continue this thing forward. You had John Brennan insist that the Steele dossier get included in this intelligence assessment. They all knew this was a complete hoax, a campaign dirty trick, and yet they put America through years of political turmoil, which has not ended. So, no, these people have interfered in our political process to a far greater extent, orders of magnitude worse than anything Russia or China could ever help. And I've been saying that for years. So, no, this has all been out there, but the media who are complicit in this. When do you think the Washington Post will give back its Pulitzer Prize for being duped or being complicit in this?
Right. I think, Senator, I think the reaction for a lot of people, including me, to the argument of we knew about this, that Tulsi Gabbard isn't releasing anything that we didn't know but there has to be consequences. What consequences can the American public expect? We don't want this to happen again. And look, it's not just this. It's COVID. It's a bunch of other things that have happened over the last couple of years, and no one has paid a price on this count, on this issue. Will anyone pay a price for what they put the country through?
Well, I sure hope so. I think John Durham uncovered a lot, but again, his reputation always was he would not indict somebody if he didn't think that he could convict them. He's doing within the D.C. district where 97% of the people are strong Democrats, and he couldn't get a conviction.
Right.
What Tulsi Gabbard is unveiling and what they did, for example, the Mar-a-Lago raid opens up a conspiracy that can potentially be tried where they could get convicted, like down in Florida. So I truly hope they open up a conspiracy investigation and they start indicting and prosecuting people under those
Thank you.
laws. From a standpoint of COVID, listen, I'm continuing to hold hearings. We gave voice to the vaccine injured, which has not been given for decades, quite honestly, because these people have been gaslit. So I'm doing everything I can to make sure the American public understands the vaccine injuries are real. That certainly the COVID injection, it's not a vaccine. The injection killed thousands, tens of thousands of people, and people have been permanently disabled, and they want to be seen, heard, and believed that they need help. And these parents who have autistic children or children have been disabled because of the childhood vaccines, these things are real. Now, again, to what extent, I don't know, but we can't be afraid to look at the truth and look at reality and give these people help.
Senator Johnson, one last question back on the Biden issue. You've now asked the National Archives and Records Administration's NARA to release up to 27,000 records with regard to the Biden White House and the activities there in light of what we've learned about President Biden's declining mental and physical health. Is there any reasonable reason why any of those documents should be withheld? It is our property. It's the American people's right to see whatever's been put to the National Archives. Because I ask you this because the National Archives, as we've seen over the last several years, has become highly partisan, I think.
Yeah, well, National Archives is in the control of, I think Marco Rubio is now in charge, but they've got other people there that are turning over documents. The Department of Justice have these documents, and again, I would not release them until the Department of Justice has determined whether or not they want to prosecute. You know, it is important is when you're doing investigation, the information you gather, you keep that confidential because, again, you're trying to get people to testify truthfully. If they know what you've got, they can craft their story around that. So I would respect the investigation from that standpoint. But at some point, no, I'm trying to create a historical record. I think the American people absolutely deserve the truth. If I get the records at some point, you know, once we've determined what prosecutions may or may not occur, I would definitely release them publicly.
Ron John, the man from Wisconsin. Senator, thank you for joining us. Good to talk with you.
Have a great morning.
It is 7:17.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
On Thursday, on Thursday, we had this Wall Street Journal story about Donald Trump writing a bawdy birthday letter, as they put it, in 2003 for Jeffrey Epstein's 50th birthday. Of course, they showed this picture of this line drawing of a stick figure of a woman with giant boobs. And that was supposed to have been doodled by Donald Trump, even though most people say the guy never doodles. He said he never
Even his
doodled.
enemies. Michael Cohen was like, I never saw the guy doodle.
The guy doesn't doodle. He doesn't doodle. Also, this weird, very bizarre sort of dialogue written like a bad eighth grader's, fever-pitched play between Epstein and Trump, which didn't make much sense and didn't sound like the Donald Trump that we've known over the years. But I still go back. First of all, I don't think that Trump wrote the card. But secondly, so what? Even if he did, it's like such a nothing story.
Yeah.
Bill Kristol thinks it's the tip of the iceberg of a huge scandal, so that tells you everything you need to know.
He does. Poor Bill.
Donald Trump threatened before the story broke. He knew it was coming, and he threatened the Wall Street Journal that he would sue if they published it. They ran with it. He is suing Wall Street against Wall Street Journal and for $10 billion. He denies the report. He wants the Wall Street Journal to retract the entire thing and apologize. Listen, he's got a pretty good track record of getting settlements when he sues media organizations.
Oh, look, yeah, and also the Wall Street Journal, the reporters who broke this story, one of them protected their tweets, the other one hasn't been on Twitter for years. They couldn't even produce the document. They saw a picture of it. And they didn't ask Trump for any kind of reaction before they printed it, which is unheard of.
By the way, the document is in the custody of the FBI or the DOJ,
right.
So that means somebody internally leaked this illegally to the Wall Street Journal, which is always part of the story here. Also, one of the reporters here, he cut his teeth on a publication. Before going to the Wall Street Journal, he worked for a publication that included, it was owned by Fusion GPS. That's the company that put together the Steele dossier. I kid you not. With Glenn Simpson, who owned the publication. Glenn Simpson's the guy who runs Fusion GPS, who concocted the Steele dossier and the Russian collusion hoax in the first place. So these roads lead back to Hillary Clinton, of course. Well, we'll see what happens with the Wall Street and whether there's a settlement there or what ends up happening.
Trump's library is going to be unbelievable.
It's palatial. The Trump White House is already sort of taking their own actions, though. They have revoked the Wall Street Journal from the press pool following the president to Scotland. So, you'll hear lots of stories about this chill wind going over. This and the Colbert firing.
Yes.
It's all
no
intimidation.
No other American reporters are on the plane, right?
Right.
Just the Wall Street Journal.
No, they're being punished. Oh, Really? You're upset about a president publishing a publication? Find out what Barack Obama did to James Rosen and Fox News when he was president, okay?
Yes.
By the way, you brilliant historians in the Beltway, go read a little about Lyndon Johnson and about how he treated reporters. Reporters who loved him, by the way. But I promise you, kicking Wall Street Journal off Air Force One because of this story is a fly in the ointment compared to what Lyndon Johnson did to the White House press pool when he was in the Oval Office. You're embarrassing yourselves. Calm down. Everybody calm down.
Everybody calm down.
It's 7:23.
Coming up, we'll talk to Josh Christenson from the New York Post. He's got an exclusive out covering Pete Buttigieg's time at the Department of Transportation, where he spent $80 billion on transportation. No, on DEI. We'll cover it. Keep it here at 7:30.
WMAL FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station. Making sense of the news. News Talk 105.9. News now. Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
7:37. Thanks for being part of our morning show here. Thanks for letting us into your morning routine. Coming up at 8:05, Joe Concha will join us, Fox News contributor, and talk about that Hunter Biden interview. Absolute meltdown. Talk about changing the name of the Redskins back to the Redskins, and also the Colbert drama. All that coming up. It's Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
And joining us now is Josh Christenson. We've enjoyed his work at the New York Post, where he has yet another exclusive, this time having to do with Pete Buttigieg's tenure at the Department of Transportation. Good morning, Josh. Thanks for joining us.
Morning, Larry. Thanks for having me on.
Your article really gives us some insight into what Pete Buttigieg's priorities were when he was the Secretary of Transportation. This is enlightening, by the way, for those of us who are observing his behavior now and recognizing all of the hallmarks of a budding presidential campaign. He wants to make the case that he could run this nation and the executive branch of our government. So given that, how did he run the one cabinet position that he had, the Department of Transportation? And based on your reporting, it looks like his priorities were, well, somewhat unique. Not DOT, but DEI.
Yeah, that was what I found looking into a lot of these records, the federal spending records, talking with specifically people in the airline industry who were trying to interact with him and push for this next-gen update to a lot of the systems that's happening now. And it's happening so quickly now that it made me want to look back and question why it hadn't happened in the previous administration and what might have been some of the obstacles. And you see that there was this primary focus on trying to achieve equitable outcomes in the way that they were distributing grants, in the way that they were awarding contracts. And many of these ended up going, I'll just point out a few. For example, there was grant that went to the Washington Center for Internships and Academic Seminars that was trying to promote diversity in the internship program for federal transit employees. There was another grant that went to the city of Portland that was trying to create a zero-emission zone in the city. There was another one that went to this group called Policing Equity in Denver, Colorado, that was trying to promote racial justice through science. So this was the kinds of things that they were focused on, and they ended up awarding basically $82.5 billion over the course of the term towards various diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives.
Josh, this report is just, it's unbelievable. He not only ignored the priorities within the airline industry, like the air traffic controlling system, he actively sought to reduce the number of planes. You quote in your article that he told industry executives that air traffic control upgrades would just allow them to fly more planes. So why would that be in his interest? Obviously citing his interest in the environment, one assumes. This is just astonishing. Did he really put sort of environmental interests over the safety of passengers through, improving the air traffic control system?
Well, I'm not sure entirely the motivations. I mean, the main motivations that I focused on in the article were that one of the main issues that the Biden administration was able to lean on when it was trying to look for, because it was polling so poorly in terms of so many different things, was some of these consumer issues around, Biden, for instance, in his State of the Union talked about how he was cracking down on junk fees. And Buttigieg had kind of a version of that where he was going after these airlines for what he saw as, unnecessarily bilking passengers and consumers for various fees. When it comes to the issue of the efficiency of flying, this was something that, when I talked to his team, they denied that this occurred. When I talked to the airline industry officials, a lot of them were saying that this was constantly something that they were butting heads over because they saw it as upgrades that had really been needed for decades. Even as recently as this year, you had, them talking about copper wires and floppy disks still being in use in some of these air traffic control centers. So it was something where they were not seeing eye to eye. Obviously, there were environmental concerns. You see that in the sort of the grant records trail, but it was also a kind of a consumer, taking the side of consumers. It was a political calculation in some ways, and something that, I'm sure if he ends up running for office again, it'll be something he'll lean on when he's talking about his record.
Well, and that's sort of the, whether we can argue, and certainly we should argue about the priorities of putting, billions of dollars into DEI grants and putting off upgrades to our air traffic control system and other parts of our transportation infrastructure. The bottom line here is that he saw this position, it appears, as Secretary of Transportation, as a way to curry favor with interest groups within the Democrat Party specifically to sort of build his political base rather than actually serve the American people. Is that a fair assessment based on your reporting?
Yeah, it's absolutely fair. You can remember many times when, he would get up. For instance, he spoke at the DNC. He spoke at the White House frequently. And when he would do some of these public addresses, he would say things like, I'm here in my personal capacity, not my, cabinet official capacity, because he was trying to speak as a political actor. He was trying to speak as somebody who's looking for opportunities to run for higher office. And a lot of those times, he was saying things that were speaking to the Democratic base. I think one of the more famous lines he had was one line where he was talking about the racism being built into the roads. And, kind of talking about these infrastructure changes that needed to happen. Yeah,
he specifically said bridges and overpasses in New York were racist, or the design of them and the location of them were born out of racism. Racist bridges. Amazing. Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, by the way, I pointed out earlier that in a June Emerson poll right now, he's polling literally at 0% with black voters. So for all that pandering and all of that, shuffling of DEI grants, he got nothing out of it. So he didn't even do that well.
Yeah, it's really kind of interesting because this was a problem that he had all the way back in the 2020 primary. You saw him do very well in Iowa, which is, pretty ethnically homogenous. And then and then you saw him go to South Carolina and get, smoked. But, it's something that he'll have to think about as he's sort of tacking and thinking what's the next step here in terms of a campaign.
Yeah, he's not in South Bend anymore. Josh Christenson, New York Post. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it, sir.
Thanks very much.
It's 7. By the way, he's literally not in South Bend anymore. He lives in Traverse City, Michigan, because why not?
Hey, it's Chris Plant. Find out what the media don't want you to know. Coming up this morning at 9, right here on WMAL.
Oh, my goodness. Really quickly, you know how I just said Wall Street Journal, they've been banned from the Air Force One for the trip to Scotland because of their Epstein story, and I told you that everyone in the media is going to go nuts for it. Can I just tell you, the New York Times just put out a statement. The White House's refusal to allow one of the nation's leading news organizations to cover the highest office in the country is an attack on core constitutional principles underpinning free speech and a free press. Who's stopping them from covering the White House? We cover the White House, and we're not on the frickin' plane. No one's stopping them from covering the White House. Cover the White House.
They are so tiresome. So tiresome.
Americans, regardless of party, deserve to know and understand the actions of the president, and reporters play a vital role in advancing that public interest. Really, where were you during the Biden administration? Where were your stories on Biden's diminished health and capacity?
Yeah.
Don't just lecture me about how important reporters are in playing a vital role in advancing
because Americans
the public
need to
interest.
know.
You took 4 years off, pal.
You keep things from. Your job is to keep things from the American public. Give me a break.
All right. I just saw that pop up. I wanted to deliver that for you. I knew you'd have
feel better.
fun. This is why I wrote my book. Buy my book. It's at Amazon.
That's
it's
right.
called Shameless Liars: How Trump Defeated the Corporate Media and Made Them Irrelevant. All right. Really bizarre and creepy story out of the Fairfax Mall here in the Washington area. Take a listen to how NBC4 reported it.
Well, every parent can relate to that moment of panic when you take your eyes off of your kid for a split second, what you think is a split second, and then you look up to see that they're not there. They've wandered off. Well, on Friday, a young girl wandered away from a play area inside a Fairfax County mall, and police say a man picked the little girl up and abducted her. Northern Virginia Bureau reporter Drew Wilder explains what happened and how police were able to track down the suspect.
It's a play area that I personally know very well. Parents supervise their kids in a small area outside of a department store, and it's mostly walled off where parents can sit and watch our kids. But on Friday morning, a toddler girl wandered off, and by the time her parents noticed she wasn't there, she was gone. Police say she was taken by a man walking inside of the mall.
The suspect walking by just walks up behind the child, approaches the child, to which the child turns around. He picks the child up and just carries him away. So if there was a community member walking by, they would have never thought anything strange about it, the way he just picked the child up and carried her away.
Yeah. Police say the suspect carried...
Thank God they got the girl and they arrested the suspect. Now, here's the rest of the story. You knew there was going to be more. Yep. Andres Caceres Haldin. He has no fixed address. He's living at apparently an extended stay in Chantilly. Nearby auto body shop reported a vehicle was stolen earlier in the morning. Detectives are reviewing surveillance to talk about whether he stole the car and everything. But are you ready? Fairfax County, he has over 30 charges in Fairfax County, including malicious wounding, which is basically attempted murder. He was free to victimize this child at the Fairfax Mall thanks to, who else? Steve Toscano, the Soros-funded prosecutor in Fairfax County.
This makes me so mad. My God.
Yeah.
So the parent actually chased after him. He picked up the little girl, little boy, we don't know. And this young toddler picked her up, and walked away. And the parent actually saw it and was able to chase after him and get the child back. And look, these mall play areas, they're distracting. Parents are distracted. Thank God this parent was paying attention and was able to get their child back. But what would have happened? This is disgusting. This guy, we don't know his status, but no fixed address, stealing cars, and a rap sheet.
30 plus charges.
Yeah. Toscano lets this guy walk free to victimize children. Wonder what else he's done.
And I wonder what Abigail Spanberger thinks about this,
Yeah.
as she has said that she wants sanctuary policies in the state and to open the doors of Virginia for
up, Fairfax. Wake up.
7:53.